So having just gone through the session with James, so we've got a handicap of index of 1. So accomplished player, someone we've built clubs for in the past. So it's not an unknown quantity. James is looking for, he's got a strong delivery, looking just to gain a little bit of performance and height in the longer irons. But with all the tools that we've got, all the tech we've got, it might surprise you as to what the bit that's going to make the biggest difference really is from this session. So quick side note, unfortunately in the first bit of the fitting, the screen recording for the PCs in the bay flipped to the data screen, to the spec screen rather than the data screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut in the relevant data as and when we can through the fit to make it as seamless as possible, but apologies that this time around production-wise the tech just failed us slightly, but we'll do the best we can with it and I hope you still enjoy the video. So James is someone we've seen before, and how long ago we built this? Longer ago than it feels like, with a split set of the Mizuno, the MP18s, the SCs in the 4 through 6, and the MBs in the 7 down. Shaft-wise, KBS Tour stiff that we've hard stepped, standard length, or what is now standard length, but swing weight a little heavier, so uses the head weight. So we're up at just under D4 on the 6 iron, and a fairly traditional off to 30-degree 6 iron as well. So decent bit of feel for the head. But not overly tip heavy in the shaft. So we'll have a bit of a chat to James about what he's trying to achieve as well from this change. Good ball striker, strong hitter. So it's really going to be a case of, right, what are the priorities from what he's looking to see performance-wise. Generally there's no tech in any of these. So whilst there's a bit of weighting lower on the head on the longer irons, that's it. What can we do from a club point of view to give him what he wants from today?
That's not a great one, but
it gives a bit of a picture. It's a little heavy from a contact point of view, but I think I think what's interesting in terms of what you're describing and want to do with the swing, looking at how you and the club are interacting, it looks like it's just getting a little bit almost sort of behind and under, and that's then hard to get the handle moving left through the ball. So it may well be, chances are we're going to nip a little bit of weight out the shaft, but it's whether we then need to give you a little bit more guts at the bottom end. So it's interesting, the last couple got a little bit steeper on the angle of attack, but generally 3-4 degrees down, which is pretty neutral, path a few degrees in to out. But yeah, and I think what we've seen from ball changes and equipment changes over the last few years is that spin numbers have come down. That's been quite noticeable, and particularly with the woods. I mean, I've always played low spin heads, and I don't think I need to anymore. So we're definitely seeing a trend from a lower spin point across the board. And blades don't take spin down. They're not. You haven't got all kind of the muscle cavities here where there's no tungsten, there's nothing tech-wise in the heads. That keeps the CG higher and retains a bit of spin. So you see, I quite like the proportion of where the spin is. And 6 iron wise, you're talking about kind of height and land angles. We pop those two on. That last one was a little bit lower. There are a couple that come out a little bit flatter, but up there 45 land angle, 90 odd feet. Now you've got quite a bit of spin, quite a bit of speed. So you're up over 90. So it is on the flatter side. If we can get that realistic, that launch angle without it being a slightly heavy strike up towards that sort of 16, 17 mark, keep the spin around the 5,000 mark on the 6 iron, then that just means peak height rather than spinny peak height, so that would be great. You're pretty fine-tuned from a shaft setup, from a dead weight setup, but I think we can certainly make it easier to get a little bit more of that kind of handle, lead and leave the face there, rather than just looking like it wants to get behind and just create a little bit of a flip over.
Makes sense.
But spin proportion to launch angle doesn't sit too low. Okay. But if we could pick it up a little bit, it'd be great if all you did was play links golf. Yeah. Which you do some of the year, but some of the year. So grand. Right. Perfect. So I'll get the current version of that Mizuno head as a start point, and we'll work on shaft first.
Great. Thank you.
looks slightly easier through the ball.
Mm-hmm.
See one more. It's just whether that, as you gain to almost trust in it, is whether you just lose the bottom end on it a little bit. Yeah, I want to see, where we're starting to see the handle moving in front of it, I just want to see the bottom, you're managing it well, but I want to see the bottom end drop in a little bit more, because I think that will make it easier to leave the loft on. So I'll just change that shaft up slightly. It just looks like as you're coming into it, it's almost letting you get a little bit more on top rather than actually working it there and leaving a bit of flight.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's doing that that doesn't flow anywhere near as well.
No, it does feel a little.
It kind of looks like that's got the bottom end separated from it. So, okay.
Yeah, it sort of feels slightly weird in the hands.
It's interesting how for like certainly when it gets to woods, and historically where I've always been, the clubs I've always had to have weight in the bottom end to kind of to help have the whole club drop in. Whereas for you, that looked like it got you and the club. It's almost like two different entities completely. Yeah.
Yep.
So good. That answers that one. Yes. Okay. So much cleaner going back to more evenly distributed.
That felt. Yeah, that just had a nice feel kind of during the swing about just being on. Everything just kind of felt in balance. Slightly heely again, but okay.
It's interesting. So the first one looked all right, and actually then, I mean, that one was fine result-wise, but actually, as you hit a couple more, it looked like it wasn't quite there. We're down at kind of 114 grams left, so I'm going to take the weight back up a little bit. I think that's a bit too much of a change.
Yeah, it did feel good on the first one.
I think if you were looking to play to back off it a little bit, to kind of quieten the swing down a little bit, I think that weight change would be good. But actually, where you still, as you get confident with it, you get kind of there, and you get onto the ball and you drive onto it. It's a little bit more of a driven action than some would be, in terms of you really kind of stay on top and cover it and use the mass to squeeze it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And if the weight's not there, there's nothing to actually kind of squeeze against. Let me take that back up a few grams. Just to get hit a stronger hit again with a bit more weight there. Yeah, you use. We can't afford to drop much weight because you use it really well. You know, where we've gone back up there. First one you could hear the strike was better, and then that one actually gave you something you could. With the lighter weights, it almost started to get a little bit. I don't know, trying to know how to describe it. The club tracks better with mass for you. So, you know, that one, it kind of takes itself back and down on plane a little bit more, whereas lighter almost got a little lost, and hence the strike went slightly towards the hosel with the lighter ones.
We won't mention
both with the separated weight and with the lighter balance. As you started to commit more, you kind of lost the club.
Yeah.
So yeah, having that bit of weight, we're literally only going to be looking at a few grams. Otherwise, more than that, it's too much of a change.
It's not the best, right? But
just a little bit. Okay.
Slightly dropped inside.
I'm going to get. I'm going to get one other one to compare with.
I think the thing I love about coming to Precision is the ability to try almost everything, kind of from different heads to different shafts. I feel like you go through every sort of conceivable permutation on club and build, and the ability to then leave with a new set of clubs which are built for you. I think it just gives you a lot of trust on the course. If I'm hitting it badly, I pretty much know it's me, rather than the clubs. When I previously bought clubs online when I was younger and didn't have either the time or inclination to invest in my equipment quite so much. You sort of I think the temptation is to kind of chop around with different clubs. So I think it's really nice to kind of be confident when you go on the course with the view that you actually have the equipment you really want.
So I'm seeing I made a change. I've not told James what it is, just made a little bit of changes to see what happens going to this option. A little clean, but still looked like it moved nicely.
Yeah, I'm going to test the forgiveness on the bottom of the face. That one.
Only dropped 7.5 yards, so not too bad.
That's pretty good.
Not too bad.
I'll take that most of the time.
So the change I made on this one was to put the current shaft in. It's just not hard stepped, and that might be all we need from a shaft point of view. Is when we dropped down to 115 odd, it just looked like you lost the club. And then once we went back up, the other shaft that worked well was the Tour V, which is a shaft that's designed to be a little lighter, but they've sort of stabilised the tip a little bit more, so in principle it normalises ball flight. But it swings very slightly differently. It's a little lighter at the bottom end, and actually that one, you could argue, are you used to it? Maybe, but equally speaking, having gone around the houses with the other options, if one of them worked better, we'd see it going back to this. It would look a little bit clumsy, a little hard work. I think the hard work bit is the hard stepping. It's only a couple of grams, but that still makes a bit of a difference. But then immediately, the shot pattern, okay, one was a bit clean, but the solid hits are literally on top of one another from a flight point of view. It's incredibly repeating. So your left-right control going back into this is straight away better.
Yeah.
So I think this is a real fine-tuned shaft-wise on just, let's take that stepping out. So it's still a couple of percent and a half, couple of percent in terms of effort level, but that's still a tangible difference. Like 5% is a really noticeable change, which is 6 grams. So yes, it's a couple of percent, but that still takes a little bit of an effort level off. And the flight consistency 0.2 on launch between the two solid hits, and you've got 36 RPM on spin. Yeah. So I think let's look to see what the head tech can do in terms of giving it a bit more flight. I think if we try and do it too much with shaft, all we're going to do is lose the dispersion, which is definitely a cost not worth having.
Exactly.
So let's have a little look at head starts, see whether through a bit of tech we can just get a bit more flight.
Sounds great.
To anyone wondering about the lead tape, that is to balance up, so we have to grind a little bit of weight off the hosel to put the adapter on, so it's just a case of getting it to weight.
Slightly high on the face, that one, but...
And that's potentially the one thing that where your action gets sort of on top and squeezes it. Sometimes tech can be prohibitive in the mid to higher loss, because you actually start to strike it above, almost on the dead spot up the face. So that's just going to be the question mark, I think, on this.
Got that one.
We'll ignore that one and get rid of that one.
That was powered. Anti-right. But not too bad.
It's interesting because on a head like this, I really listen to the sound of it. And it's whether if it's the wrong style of head, something this is going to sound a little bit almost sort of hollow, a little tinny. So a shot like that's a really interesting one because Sod's Law, which would be really useful. Didn't pick strike point.
Perfect.
Which would be really useful. But it's a neutral delivery.
Yeah.
We take 6 down. It's actually come out with less ball speed. So yeah, some of it is that, you know, with a head like this or like your current ones, there's no tech. So actually, because the hosel weighs 60 odd grams, the sweet spot sits slightly inside.
Yep.
And a little higher up on the head. Whereas on that one, there's a bit of weight down the bottom in the toe, which pulls the CG down and towards the toe side. So if your strike point is up the face and slightly heel side, there's not the guts there behind it to get it punching off the face. So actually that one where there's more tech, you know, those are not gaining you, and that's closed the face. So that's going to gain a bit of ball speed purely through shutting the face down. But that one that's neutral isn't coming off the face any faster.
Then
If anything, if anything, it's slower. 127, 128 ball speed out of the S3. You know, and we're looking at, you know, on one that's closed the face 4 degrees, 127, but then a square face one, 123. So interestingly enough, going to this head at this loft, I don't think is beneficial.
Yeah.
I wonder whether if we're looking to see more flight, either we just pull the loft back a little bit, just to pick that flight up a little bit. You know, a degree's going to be a few yards, but it gives you a bit more peak height. I think it's worth us looking at, say, a 4-iron on this, maybe comparing with your current one, to see, is there a flight gain there where if you shallow out a little bit, does that then start to activate to get the best out of the tech? But on this one, because of where you're a strongish side on the angle of attack, that kind of 6
it's kind of coming
down,
a bit high up the face, yeah.
I think ultimately you're just getting that kind of top spot where, I'll get a head that essentially, you know, up there, there's nothing there because they've removed weight from there to put it down. So that's where I'm not certain this head on the 6-iron is a good option, but I'll pop a 4-iron together to test out as well. So we're going to look at whether the M13 head, where it's got a bit of tech in, whether that's a benefit at the 4-iron, but Dave's just hitting his 4-iron, his current one, as a sort of a benchmark, because this would really be where, you know, we want to be seeing. So like that one there is 87 feet, 41 land angle, but this is where we could really do with that bit of extra launch in particular. Yeah, and you can hear that's a solid hit.
Yeah.
But out of the current head, you know, 142 efficiency, well, we should, with a bit of face tech, be able to beat that. It's interesting going back to that. Did that feel harder work? Or not?
So,
I mean, it's a fine
in some
tune.
ways, but you know, there's an element of it feels kind of trust you. You know, you sort of know what you're going to get out of it.
The old comfy pair of shoes.
Yeah. That's sort of miss. Would be a classic kind of slightly toed.
Mm-hmm.
Fairly representative data set of what I'd expect on the course.
I would say that one's quite a good one to kind of say, well, yeah, at that sort of ball speed, yeah, that's getting a little bit flat. But to peak at 75, 37 at your ball speed, that's where, yeah, definitely be looking to get that up to more the 90, 95 foot mark, which, you know, yes, we want a little bit more spin, but ultimately, you know, you're not massively steep 3 degrees. Yes, you can cover it and deliver a stronger loft, which pulls launch down, but yeah, that is a little bit flat. And the other one, the higher one,
which
wasn't quite as well hit, but was still only 80 feet. Yeah. So yeah, we certainly want to, you know, the best hit one, 87, but that also hung right. So that's going to add a little bit of flight. We want that. I'd like to see that minimum there without it having to be to the right.
Yep.
So there we go. Let's see what we get here. So we've got an exact match on loft and lie on this one. It's got a calculation on spin. That's the only thing with them. It's the only thing every now and then with the tailor-made balls is the spin measurements. Like that one's in italic, so it's just a calculation. But ball speed efficiency is up a little bit.
Slightly high on the face, that one, I think.
Okay. Which just takes that little bit of spin down. Okay. Right, that'll be an interesting one. Okay, so it's good on the one hand, but not so good on the other. So the good on the one hand bit is the ball speed. So efficiency 147, you know, the best hits with your current head 144, 145. So you're picking up a couple of miles an hour in ball speed, which is great, but
still spin rate's a bit down, and
we need a head that's going to
not,
spin it a little bit more. So it's yeah, and that's, to be honest, it was one of the things that surprised me a little bit with that head, is that it doesn't pop it up quite as much as I thought it might. So in order to get a bit more flight, it's actually there's a head I'm going to go to see out of interest what it does, but a change of brand is the only way to get a little bit more pickup, because so we have seen with that head, whilst it's forgiving and it's fast, they just knock the flight down a little bit more than maybe we thought they would this year. So, but you can see at this loft, now we're starting to get the ball speed. You can hear the strikes really solid. You know, each of those, that one missed the spin actually, that calculation, but again, 146 efficiency, little heavy, you know, 147. The ball speed's there, it's just not doing that much. So I'm going to get a different head to compare with that, just as a sighter to see what this does. Same spin calculation.
Quite flighted.
Similar launch. Good ball speed again though.
Just high on that face again.
Yeah. Interesting. Doesn't seem quite as solid on a strike.
I'll give it one more.
Yeah, it's not giving you as much back.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Don't feel like it is.
So what I'm gonna add a bit of loft to that Mizuno 4-iron head. So ball speed was great.
Yeah.
Just if we get a little bit more loft onto it, can that give us what we need? Because if it's gaining good enough ball speed off the face, then we can afford to give up a little bit of loft to gain the height and still keep the carry distance onto it.
See if we can actually strike one.
Just getting a little dropped under and from the inside a little bit more on those two. So path just got 5 odd into out there.
Yeah. All right, be a bit more cutty.
Oh, did I? I think actually, sorry, my mistake. I think on this, let me check swing weight. Did I get that? Did I take a bit of weight off? No, not really.
No.
Not really. Let me put a hair more onto that. Just
I think it might be user.
Look like I just lost the head a little bit.
User variation.
Okay, let's see with that. So just wanted to double check the balance on that, just make sure I didn't use some of the weight off that head on one of the others, which I didn't, but I just added a little bit of head weight to it. Just looked like James was just losing the head slightly.
I'm in my own head now.
Yeah.
It's the issue about golf, isn't it? If you think about it too much,
Yeah, lose a bit of flow.
Okay, better strike.
I mean,
Tiny bit left.
Perfect case in point of that is what happened to Mr. Lowry at the weekend.
Yeah,
It just happens to the best.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a nice line through. So it's picked launch up a bit. Yes, it's not really going to change spin proportion, but it has picked flight up a little bit. What would be? So what's going to be almost interesting? I just wonder whether, in terms of seeing enough change in ball flight, probably this will have knock-on effects to the rest of the bag, but to see tangibly more ball flight, ball is probably the bit that's going to make the biggest difference.
Yep.
Let me put, if you're on TB5X, let me put down TB5, see what that does.
Follow a McElroy. Well, I think it's TB5. Yeah.
Just see whether that helps just to pick up a little bit more launch and spin.
Rubbish strike, but seemed to do okay out of it.
Just got that covered over a little bit in terms of face angle. Delivery line fine. Good ball speed. Oh, it's the spin measurement of this ball. It's not picking
Didn't
as
pick it
well
up.
as I'd like. We'll give it one more. If not, I'll then switch to a slightly different ball type just as a comparison point.
Slightly toe.
Yeah, this one, well, we'll ignore the TP5 ball ones because it's just not picking the spin rate off those balls, which is annoying. So if we go almost to see what a little bit of an extreme does. So if we're taking a TP5X is a lower spin ball, let's take it to almost more of an exaggeration and go, right, see what Pro V1X does, just from a picture flight point of view, because that should pick that up noticeably. Let's see whether that actually tangibly changes that launch and spin pattern. It's I guess the complication then becomes, okay, well, what does that do to the rest of the bag and driver? Change the feels of the chipping and the putting. But in terms of what's going to make a really noticeable difference to flight, does it make a really good change? Okay, spin at 3.8. Okay, so didn't sound your cleanest hit.
No, I think it's just a tiny bit high on the face, I think.
But we're still seeing that spin. So so if we take spin with the TB5X was 3.3. So there is tangibly more spin there out of this. So you're seeing, even for one that wasn't, we've had another couple of miles an hour, had slightly cleaner hits. That's still up at 86 feet, up at 40. It's going to help. Let me put the,
one more.
Do one more there. We'll see what it does to 6-iron flight. Yeah, so that one that hung right, that's in the 4s on spin.
Yeah.
So, so there's a
91,
tangible pickup in trajectory, which then maybe means not having to force the loft quite as much.
Yep. So
what we're going to do, in order to get the flight at the long iron end of things, realistically a ball change is going to help achieve that. So it's one of those where testing now, going back to the 6-iron head to see if we were to go to the spinnier ball in the mid irons, what does that do to where the flight sat for the 6-iron? Because ultimately getting the extra height at the long end of the bag, I think a ball changer will be useful in those longer irons.
Does seem to be, I don't know whether it's
so slightly shallower angle of attack on that one.
Yeah, I think as over time with this fitting, my grip has been getting a little bit stronger, which is my bad habit in golf, which obviously probably affects launch angle a little bit and a bit of overdraw. Whereas this is now, face is now pretty much 0 to par, so you're getting a little bit more.
Yeah, height. What we are seeing, what we didn't get at all earlier was they're all 4.8 odd, maybe creeping to 5,000-ish, but 5.5. So it's a relatively, it's a reasonable change in kind of the structure of the ball, going from the 5X, which is a stronger spin, to Pro V1X, which is a higher flighted one. But there's quite a tangible change in flight. We're up at 100 feet, 48 land angle, whereas we were, let me make sure I'm using the right shaft, that's the toy, S3 there, yeah, so whereas sort of, okay, that was a little bit of a miss, 94 feet, 46, 4.9 on spin, so 4.8, 4.9, so picked up six odd hundred revs in terms of spin rate there, which I would expect that kind of change. So I think from a club point of view, if we try and force the flight too much out of the club heads, all we end up doing is basically knackering either strike consistency or I think trying to force them out of too much. I think if we're going to tangibly change pitch of flight, ball is the best way of doing it, because otherwise I think we lose some of the consistency of distance, contact point, and therefore control over distance. But we can certainly make a 2 or 3 degree land angle difference, or a couple of degree land angle difference out of a ball change. But I think trying to do, because it's not like your 6-iron was at 28 degrees, we were bringing it back to 30. We're already at 30, so there's only so far we can go with loft. We can definitely deliver a little bit more ball speed out of, say, the 4-iron head with a change, but we're not going to dramatically affect launch and spin from a head change, because the spin proportionally on that head's pretty good, and it's a more traditional 4-iron loft. So we haven't got a lot of places to go, and actually add a bit of tech and it kind of brings the flight back down. So really using the construction of the ball, if we're going to tangibly change that spin and launch profile or spin profile, ball's the most direct way of doing it. With it, it's just we don't want to compromise the top end of the bag, but you can fine tune loft on those clubs as well to mitigate those. Again, you can turn loft down 1 degree and take 400 or 500 revs of spin back off if need be at the top end of the bag. But we can't achieve with the irons quite as much of a gain. It's far easier to drop it down at the top end a little bit more if we need to. So I would be looking at more of a ball change rather than trying to force them too much out of the club heads. Because with your delivery, we compromise the strike point a little bit too much trying to use that tech into the irons, unless it's in a 4-iron. So it's actually, I guess a bit more of a slight tweak to shaft weight by not hard stepping them. A very slight tweak to construction, potentially at the very top end of the set. But actually, for you, it's more ball that's going to make the biggest difference than trying to get the clubs hoisting them up in the air.
Yeah, and that is something I probably noticed with the TP5X over the last, kind of 3 iterations. For 6 years, it has seemed to become more of a kind of knuckle ball. It used to take a bit of spin off and be the right launch, but I feel like it's almost like the AVX and Titleist. It becomes quite knuckly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're playing on a really windy day, great. But if you're playing in fast, firm, kind of hot conditions, I think it does seem to lose a little bit.
I think what we're seeing out of a few of these, and I think the balls launching this year, in principle, should alleviate some of it. But is that where at your kind of speeds, if you're compressing the core, in your kind of longer irons, sort of mid-90s or so, then actually you're getting the low spin out of it. And so some of them have tailed off in spin quite a lot once you're getting into kind of longer irons for higher speed players. And actually some of the new balls are talking about actually retaining some of that spin in the irons so the long irons don't become too chasey. So take the left dash this year is designed to actually retain a little bit more spin in the longer irons. So it might well be that actually a bit of a playing around with some different ball types, the Callaway, the Chrome Tour series, very good reviews on those, to find one that just finds the best balance of spin across the set. But I think, say, if we try and force it out of the heads, I think we're forcing it rather than actually gaining anything from doing it. I think we compromise consistency of contact versus, for the sake of a few feet in flight height versus actually something we can tangibly change more with ball type. So yes, we're actually quite interesting. It's a real fine tune on the club side of things. And whilst we've got all of these tools to try and manipulate the flight, actually there are other ones that are available, like the golf ball, which actually there are some really tangible differences you can make to particularly spin out of the golf balls. So we can try and say, from our point of view, yes, we want to use the club as much as possible so we don't have to resort to different feels and different performances. But ultimately, to gain what we're trying to today, ball's the best way to do it. So it's just might be a case of a bit of adjustment, short game wise in particular, from a feel standpoint. But for someone like yourself, it shouldn't take too long, hopefully. But it's sort of interesting. I thought we'd get a little more out of the club change, but turns out ball's the best way.
Yeah, I think I probably felt the same when I came in. I thought, a bit of modern tech. We obviously didn't go for, a more kind of, I suppose, player, sort of help iron previously in the last set. And I thought going towards that might just help. We could obviously de-loft it to get into a normal kind of loft window, and it would then boost it up. But it seems when I was last year, we also changed ball along with the irons, and this time we're changing
going back the other way
ball again, which I think makes sense. And as I said, I think getting that window right in the long irons is I mean, for me definitely the right option.
And it's thinking about what actually is that the gain there and balancing up, is that gain there going to mean, from a scoring point of view, gaining you more than maybe losing a few yards on a driver, at 300 odd plus with the driver, which I know you are. Actually a few yards off that, but being able to attack par fives a little bit more and hold greens a little bit more, actually, value-wise is probably a little bit more in that. So, certainly something, if you can consider an equipment side of things, don't forget golf ball being a tool that you can use. Yes, we're focused on the heads and the shaft side of things, but there's a massive lever that you can use from a golf ball point of view that, in James's case, there's a tangible change there. So don't ignore that side of it. But that can be really used to kind of fine tune and augment feel and flight windows as well. So make sure to remember that bit as well.